Hi, this is Tom and welcome to this week's Thrive in 5. This week I want to talk about how to get it done right. And how to get it done right is something that constantly shows up, whether it be in marketing, in operations, in any manner of different things. How to get it done right is something that as a business owner, as an executive, as someone just trying to do a task within a company, is always something that's up to you to ensure that you're doing. And what I've grown to discover in my company and in what we do here at Flourish Press is the best and most appropriate way to do that is in something called a checklist. It's the best way to get things done right. And a lot of what I'm talking about today comes from this book called The Checklist Manifesto by Dr. Atul Gawande. And this book really outlines in very significant detail the reasons why checklists work so well and a lot of actual data to confirm it, mainly from the medical industry. And really what Dr. Gawande talks about in this book is the reality that in our world today, everything's complex. In the hospitals that he's talking about, for a particular activity, there might be 200 different actions that have to happen to ensure it's done right. So there is a complex nature to everything we do. The second thing he talked about in the book and that he discusses a lot is our inherent ability to forget things when things are complex. So we tend to forget stuff, and it's easy, especially when there's a lot of complexity to it. The third thing he talks about, which I think is really interesting, is almost our predisposition to take shortcuts and find ways to overdo steps, even if we know them to be appropriate, right, and help to get something accomplished in the right way. But we just seem to forget, especially in a complex world. So what happens and what they discovered in so many trials and tests they did was that when this occurs and people are to rely on their own sense that they can figure it out or they can remember, deaths happened, accidents happened, problems emerge. And so what they did was they really did a simple activity, which was they added checklists into the operating room. And when they started adding a simple paper checklist into the operating room, what they discovered was that the deaths went down, the accidents went down, problems were reduced, mainly because they understood that a simple checklist helped to offset some of these particular issues that were so much a problem in the medical field. Well, as you probably know, this occurs in medical, it occurs in pilots. Pilots go through checklists. Many safety companies really employ checklists to ensure the things are done right. And there's a whole bunch of other areas that are really critical in terms of getting things done right. The checklists matter. So my question is, why do you think it won't matter to you? We've actually tested this in our business, and here's what we're discovering. We actually have a checklist for how to develop a website. It actually ends up being about 400 items long, but what we do know is as we develop that checklist, when we're developing a website, we know how to do it. We have a direct mail distribution checklist. We have a podcast checklist. So every time we do a podcast, there's a certain series of things that have to be done in order to get the podcast out. We've worked to develop checklists in pretty much every service area of our business, just so that we know what's happening and we know it's getting done appropriately. And so in order to give you a sense of how we do that, let me just explain this to you. If there is a process that we engage or a specific activity that we engage, we try and understand that and we do it and we try it and we learn it. But then after that, we actually develop a checklist for that and we work to make sure that checklist works. Once we have a checklist in place that we feel has logical flow to it, we then develop an SOP or a standard operating procedure that's tied to the checklist, so that if we need screenshots about how to do something, if we need other information, if there's specific tasks that have to be done to support this checklist, then we define and lay them out. And then we actually begin to use it, and then we try to evaluate and innovate around it as necessary. And this process keeps going. And what's become really cool for us is now that when we step into a project or we have to hand it off to a new team member, all they have to do is follow the checklist and the SOPs, and we get things done right. That's this week's Thrive in 5. You got some great information. Now, go do something good with it. We'll talk to you next time.